Welcome to Short Course, episode 137 for October 11th, 2024. I'm your host, Ben Barry. Sorry for the break between episodes. We ended up having our big sort of matches are over for the year. Let's go to the beach and have some time to kind of do nothing and just relax. We had a vacation as a family, and then the week after we got home from that vacation, there was a bunch of stuff that was all piled up from being out on that vacation. So it's between being extremely not busy while we were on vacation and then very busy after the vacation. It's been a busy few weeks. I'm recording this one on Friday night just to get it out this week before the weekend, but I thought it was worth going ahead and wrapping up the topic from last week, well, last episode, and the few episodes before that, which are just talking about all the elements of the Area 6 match, and now both Area 6 and North Carolina that I think are interesting or worth talking about. So first off is actually a bit of an addendum to last episode, and that is I realized that there was one other aspect of staff reset that I forgot to mention, which is the fact that, and again, I don't know how this is in other parts of the country, but I know, and I suspect one of the things that helps staff reset as a program be sustainable in this area is the fact that we make sure that every year there is an RO class somewhere in North Carolina. Generally speaking, it's somewhere close to wherever the section match is being held. But every year there's an RO class, and every other year there's a CRO class in addition to that. So some years there's two, most years there's one, and then coincident with the Area 6 match, there was both an RO and a CRO class, which that's a perk of a level 3 match, which in theory anybody can run a level 3, but in practice it's only area directors or their delegate running an area match. So it's sort of a perk the area directors give to themselves. But either way, you basically, for the RO and the CRO class, you get the NROI fee is half off. So if you do both, you get one of them for free, basically. But anyway, by making sure that a major match is scheduled so that people who are interested can take the class in the months leading up to it, you have a relatively steady supply of people who are interested in working their first match and getting that match experience. Because, there's a little bit of live fire in the class, but the number of shooters that you run at a level 2 is so much greater than the experience you're going to get at an RO class or the CRO class. So I have a suspicion that having the classes definitely helps with our recruiting efforts. And you might think, well, why doesn't everyone have an RO class or CRO class? And frankly, the way that they are structured right now, somebody is out of pocket $1,000 to $1,500 every time they want to run one. Assuming you basically charge the $40 per head that USPSA takes. So when you run an RO class or CRO class, you have to pay USPSA $40 a head for the first 20 students, whether you get 20 to sign up or not. And then on every additional student, they want an additional $40. So they want their 800 flat, which if you just charge that $40 to the students, okay, you take in their money, you basically forward it on to NROI. But then on top of that expense, as the class host, you are on the hook for lodging and meals and a rental car and basically all the sort of incidentals other than the plane ticket for the RO instructor, as well as typically we'll do a lunch. We'll have lunch brought in on Saturday just so everybody kind of stays on the range, and you can have a lunch break, but you're not waiting for people to come back because people never leave the range to go get lunch. It helps, but it costs to have that catered in. So basically it's one of those things where unless you're either charging something like $80 a head to host the class, or if you're just charging the bare minimum, then you're out of pocket. Well, here in North Carolina, and again with Area 6, we just fund those classes out of the match fees, and so it's just sort of one of those assumed things. I don't know how it's done in other parts of the country, but I imagine unless you have a gun club that just has $1,000 or $1,500 that they can just set on fire by hosting an RO class, or you have people that are willing to not only take 2 days out of their weekend to go take a class, but also pay $80 or whatever it would take for the class to break even just on sign-up fees. there are definitely areas of the country where there isn't an RO class every year. It might be a few years between them. And I definitely think that is something that we, as USPSA, as the overseer of NROI, we need to address. To me, if someone's willing to put in the time, okay, having, a little bit of skin in the game financially isn't a bad thing, but having clubs basically have to come out of pocket, or, otherwise basically have somebody footing the bill, leads to the outcomes that we see now, which is in some areas there are not that many RO classes. So even if you're getting into the sport and you want to get involved and you want to take a class, it might be a year or two before there's actually a class within a few hours drive of you. And that's here on the East Coast. Further out west, I imagine it's even worse just because everything's so much further away. And so even a 4-hour drive doesn't get you that much closer to that many clubs. So just a little coda on that. Now, I wanted to talk about two things on this episode that are things that we did at both the Area 6 match and the North Carolina match. And the first one is incorporating one-handed shooting in a freestyle context. So this means using the rule in the rule book that allows you to specify that a certain number of shots in the stage, or a certain number of targets, no more than the last 6 shots in the stage, must be engaged one-handed. And at North Carolina, there was a single stage. So 1 out of the 10 stages used this rule to require strong hand shooting. And at Area 6, out of the 12 stages, we had 1 that did it for a weak hand and 1 that did it for a strong hand. And I think this is something that I would like to see more of. I think, and we'll come back in a little bit to ways I think this could be done better, but I do think one-handed shooting is an interesting test of skills. I don't know. Weak hand shooting is a bit of a parlor trick, but it is part of the sport. It is something that is a fair test. But certainly I think one-handed strong hand shooting is a real challenge to your fundamentals. And it uses all the same skills that you need when you're shooting freestyle, but you just have to be that much more deliberate about your technique because you don't have your weak hand on the gun to help steady it, if your trigger pull's a little sloppy, or to help control recoil. And so between those 3 stages, right, the 2 at Area 6, the 1 at North Carolina, I wanted to incorporate that element of one-handed shooting, but do it in a freestyle way. So it's not a part of a speed shoot where it's, shoot some targets, do a reload, shoot some other targets one-handed, or a Virginia count stage where, again, you basically have some dictated stuff that you shoot, do a mandatory reload, and then have some stuff that you have to shoot with one hand. Fundamentally, because I think one of the things that I would like to see anytime that we are testing one-handed shooting is shot calling. And to me, this is the biggest problem with using Virginia count stages to test one-handed shooting, which is that if you call a bad shot, you can't make it up. And I understand it's very convenient to use Virginia count to test one-handed shooting because you can do the thing where, okay, you have some targets, okay, shoot everything twice, do a reload, and then shoot everything twice one-handed over again. And by basically heavily penalizing makeup shots, you make it so that there is no incentive to shoot extra shots before the reload and then basically whiff on your one-handed shooting. And yeah, that's a real problem depending on the stage, how the stage is set up. It might be faster to just take the extra splits on the clock. And obviously, if it's at a level 2 or level 3 match and people shoot the extra shots freestyle and then they're just burning shots one-handed, that gets into some real unsafety territory. So we don't want to set up stages in a way that incentivize and reward people to be unsafe, which if you don't do it right, having something where basically you can shoot extra shots freestyle and then just burn rounds to comply with the stage brief one-handed, that's a problem. So we want to avoid that. And so basically the best tool that we have in the arsenal, well, so you can have a speed shoot, which all has to be shot from one position. So it's a stand and shoot. Or you can have one-handed shooting as a part of a standard exercise, which can either be scored Virginia count, which has the problems I just listed, or fixed time. But both of those, in both scenarios, it has to be a 2-string stage, which I was trying to avoid 2-string stages just for match flow reasons. So basically all that left, the only way you can mandate one-handed shooting in a stage, other than having a prop where basically you have to, carry the box full of rocks or whatever, in one hand while you shoot with the other hand. Other than prop construction, the only way to integrate one-handed shooting in a freestyle way was this rule where it's at the end of a stage. And this was something that it definitely led to some eyebrow raising and some discussions among the RMs at both matches. Luckily, we had Gary McConnell as one of the two RMs at Area 6 and as the RM at North Carolina. So he kind of, after we went through all this at Area 6, he knew how to handle things. But he already came in, he was familiar with the rules and basically how to brief it. And he even on staff day made sure to brief every single squad as they came through those stages so that they understood exactly how engaging is defined. And so, the rules say you can require no more than the last 6 shots of the stage to be weak hand only. But when we actually write the WSB, the way that NROI and everyone encourages you to write it is to say the last X number of targets. And that was actually relevant because on the weak hand stage at Area 6, it was an L-shaped shooting area where you started at the front, basically the long end of the L went downrange. You started there and you basically shot back up the long side of the L, and then you went to your left along the short leg of the L. And the last 3 targets you would see was an open piece of paper at 10 yards, nothing crazy, and then 2 mini poppers at about 12 yards. And so we said the last 3 targets had to be taken weak hand only. And those were the only two steel targets in the stage. And so you could run it some other way, but if you chose to run it some other way where you didn't take the mini poppers as 2 of the last 3 targets, then you were taking 6 shots weak hand only because you were engaging paper, and the paper required 2. So basically, if you did it the way that the stage was sort of naturally constructed, you only had to fire 4 shots weak hand only. Now that's assuming you went 1 for 1 on the mini poppers, but that was sort of the most efficient way to just back up through the shooting area, shoot the targets as they were available, get to the end, transfer the gun to your left hand, put 2 on the open paper, and then go for the steel. And I was actually really happy with how that stage worked out. 12-yard mini poppers weak hand was not an outrageous challenge, but it definitely was something that I don't think you see as much, certainly as much as I would like. I think it is a fair shooting challenge. I think it definitely put some people's skills to the test. And overall, I'm really happy with how that stage worked out. And the main clarification that had to be made for the staff and for the shooters is that engaging means the first shots you fire at the target. So even if you come up, shoot 2 shots at something freestyle, and then you transfer to your weak hand and you shoot 2 more at it, you've already engaged it. And if you shoot your last 2 targets, what you think are your last 3 targets, and then you realize you forgot a target, well, now that target is your last target. And so if you put 2 hands on the gun and go back and shoot him, well, now you've shot your last target freestyle, which is not following the stage brief. So if somebody forgets a target and comes back to it, well, then that becomes their new last target and they have to shoot that one weak hand or strong hand only. So it was actually fairly reasonable to administer. And the other stage at Area 6 was it was nothing super exceptional. It was at the end of a relatively complex stage with some sort of back and forth movement, and then you just went up to the middle front position, and there were just 3 paper targets visible from the front. You had to take the last three targets strong hand only. There was really only one reasonable place to end up on that stage, but it was some of the distances were a little more stretched out, and so it was definitely a test of accuracy. And after doing all the running back and forth, could you come in, settle down, and get your hits one-handed? And then the strong hand stage at North Carolina was one that I designed, and I was actually I was reasonably happy with it just because it was the way it was laid out. It was a rectangular shooting area, basically straight left, straight right, and you started at some X's, a few steps behind the shooting area in the middle, but basically all the way at the left end of the box, there were basically 3 targets you could see pretty easily. In the middle, there were kind of 2 targets that you would be tempted to shoot on the move, and then as you went to the right side of the box, there was one target that opened up pretty early, one target that opened as you got deeper, and then one target that opened up as you got to all the way to the right end of the shooting area. And it was mirrored basically, so that it was the same thing for a lefty. So the end result was you were basically incentivized to, off the jump, run in, hit that first leftmost position, because there was that one target that kind of nailed you to that spot. But then, depending on how much you wanted to shoot on the move, you could, from that first position of the 3 targets you could see, you could start rolling out on 1 or 2 of them, and then take the 2 in the middle, and then potentially just take your left hand off the gun. Gun's already in your strong hand, and of the 3 targets remaining, and you had to shoot the last 3 targets on this strong hand only, of those 3 targets remaining, you could see 2 of them already from pretty much wherever you were going to be shooting your, the fourth to last target. You could almost certainly see something and shoot it almost immediately. And so what that ended up doing was, because the angles were set up in such a way, you were actually incentivized to shoot one-handed on the move. Now, there were certainly good shooters who just shot the first 5 targets and then ran to the end, posted up, settled in, and just went 2-2-2 strong hand only without shooting on the move. But I thought that was you never know when you design a stage if it's actually going to pan out the way you imagine it. But that was one where it basically panned out the way I'd hoped, which was, if you really wanted to be aggressive and take a very spicy stage plan, this was a stage, and maybe the only stage that you might shoot all year, where you were actually incentivized and rewarded for shooting one-handed on the move. And yeah, okay, it was a 16 round stage out of the whole 10 stage match. So, it wasn't a zillion match points or anything, but I was really happy with how that skill could be tested, and in a way where you basically could choose whether you wanted to shoot on the move or not. So I think you can, if you really set your mind to it, come up with some interesting stages and some interesting challenges with this style of using this one rule of integrating into a Comstock stage where you're allowed to take makeup shots. You're rewarded for calling your shots and shooting makeups. You can have freestyle stages that use this rule with the one-handed shooting at the end, but I do think it's probably more work than it has to be. One of the things that I've experimented with in the 3 years now that I've been running this outlaw match at a local indoor range is different ways to work in one-handed shooting. And my personal rule is, of the 4 stages every month, I want to have some one-handed shooting somewhere, because I think it's a skill that should be tested. And so across the 4 stages, one of them will typically have a component of one-handed shooting. But I don't think, maybe once or twice I've done it where the whole stage has to be shot one-handed, but that's pretty rare. So generally speaking, I'll do it as either, shoot everything once, do a reload, shoot everything again, strong hand only. And it's a low enough stakes match that people generally don't try and in-game that too much, but there's always that potential. But the other 2 ways that I've used to integrate one-handed shooting in a freestyle way is either having a particular port and saying all the shots through this port have to be strong hand only, or I never run weak hand only at this match because it's meant to be more beginner friendly, and I think strong hand is still a pretty decent challenge, but you could imagine the same thing being done weak hand only, where basically you choose, it's sort of like a low port, right? If there's a low port in the middle of the stage, you have this choice where you can go shoot all the stuff on the left, go to the low port, shoot through it, get up, and then go shoot all the stuff on the right. Or you can shoot all the stuff on the left, all the stuff on the right, and end on the low port. In that way, the low port, it's freestyle. You can choose your stage plan. And to me, I would like to see one-handed shooting incorporated into stages similar to that, where you can basically, there are viable plans where either you can kind of do a little more movement and end on the one-handed position, or position or port or view or whatever it is, right? Where you're doing the one-handed shooting. Or if you want to do a bunch of shooting, switch to one hand and then switch back, right? I mean, would it be interesting to do a weak hand to strong hand transfer on the clock? I don't know. I mean, it's certainly never, not something I've ever practiced, but if there was a stage that basically said, hey, all the shots through this window have to be weak hand only, but the rest of the stage is freestyle, I think that would be, assuming it was set up in a way that it could be adjudicated fairly. I think there are options for that. And I don't know. I think it's something worth trying. It's gone well when I've run it at this local match. And then the other thing that I've done is just designate particular parts of the shooting area. It's basically it's a separate shooting area. So often it's with boxes. So basically, all the shots from boxes A or B are freestyle, but all the shots from box C have to be one hand only. And the boxes are laid out where basically you can do a little more running to the shortest path between the boxes is to go to the one-handed box first and then to the, back to the freestyle box. But for the people who are more comfortable with ending on the one-handed only shooting, that's an option too. So, I could imagine having, a separate shooting area. And obviously the main thing is you'd need the shooting areas. You'd either need to say, if you have, 1 foot in the one-handed shooting area, if you have even a toe in that area, then all the shots have to be one-handed, just in case they're close enough where you could have 1 foot in each area. How do you adjudicate that? Or the rule could just be, it has to be more than 4 feet away so that you basically physically can't be in both boxes at once. So, I think there are administrative ways that can be worked around like this. But so in IPSC, you just declare a whole stage as shot one-handed. Okay, I think that would be cool. I would like it if that was a rule we could use. But I think there's actually potential to go even further than that and integrate one-handed shooting, like I said, similar to a low port, as something that's a freestyle element where you can choose where you want to integrate it into your stage plan. But all that to say, I think if you do it right and you understand sort of how to enforce the rule fairly, the last X number of targets in the stage is a perfectly workable rule, especially for level 2 and level 3 matches. I'd love to see that kind of test at nationals. Not just sort of stand and shoot, speed shoot type one-handed shooting, but we'll see. But I was happy with how those worked out in the context of these 2 matches. And the other thing that I think is worth mentioning is chrono, which is something where, so at Area 6, that was something that was delegated. We had a crew that ran chrono. I was not directly involved with that. I didn't. I didn't have the bandwidth to sort of be as hands-on with that part of the matches as I would have liked to be. But I mean, from everything I heard, things went fine. There were no major issues. I didn't hear of anything, any contentious calls. But at North Carolina, I ended up working chrono for the match just because it worked out. I had the experience and I was sort of training up some folks that it was their first time, and logistically it worked out. So I actually worked the chrono on Friday for the staff, and then I worked it Saturday training up my partner in crime there. And then he actually ran it with some other folks on Sunday, and I went off and just shot the match on Sunday. So we kind of had this, overlap mechanism that I think worked well, but it gave me a chance to get settled in, figure out where the bugs were, and also, sort of spread the knowledge, not just be the guy who's always chrono's my thing. I always do it. And certainly the most memorable thing was we've had a lab radar. So the NC section owns a lab radar, and we've borrowed one. So we've always had a dual lab radar setup, and it's never been great. We have certainly had some problems in the past, especially being set up next to a concrete wall with open guns and PCCs and the echoes and the lab radar struggling to pick up the shot with their internal microphones when it goes off. And I remember last year at North Carolina, there were a number of shooters, open shooters in particular, where we would run through 8 rounds and not get a single good velocity off of either chrono, or get crazy town, 3,000 feet per second type velocities. And so we just passed them through chrono because we could not accurately measure their equipment. And for whatever reason, where we were set up at Sir Walter Gun Club this year, we were next to a concrete wall again, but we also were shooting into this berm that was pretty close. It was pretty low. It was kind of sloped at a funny angle, and it had a bunch of trees on it. And anything that was a sort of normal 1,000 feet per second pistol cartridge, whether it was 40 major, 45 major, 9 minor, it was all fine. Some of the like hot NATO spec 1,200 feet per second 9mm did not chrono well with the lab radars, but the open guns and the PCCs were just a complete no-go. And that was enough of an issue on Friday during the staff day that we were able to, from 2 of the staff members, they both had the Garmin 0 chronos. And so we set those up, put some rounds over them, and holy cow, those things are flawless. I mean, not only are they tiny, not only is the user interface easier to use, the screen's easier to read, but they never missed a shot. I mean, the whole weekend that we were using them, open guns, PCCs, nothing. It was amazing to me. I thought the lab radars were pretty good, especially compared to the old light-based chronos that we were using before the lab radars. They definitely were better than that. But yeah, the Garmin's, I mean, there is just, as much as I hate to say it, you know, we're the section bought this lab radar, and for, I don't know, what's $600 a couple of years ago, and if we get $200 for it, we'll be lucky, because I mean, Garmin has just come out of nowhere and just I mean, crushed it. So yeah, if you're in any way involved with a match and you're on the fence, just find the money and get you a Garmin, or you know, find somebody you know that has one and borrow it, because they are the ticket. Now, the flip side of this is the fact that it was definitely an interesting experience, because this was by far the most number of certified ammo forms that I've ever seen at a match, especially at North Carolina. And you know, the certified ammo program, well, I don't have enough time to really go into it here, but I think the original idea was, it was based around match ammo, where you're traveling somewhere and you can fly with your guns, but ammo's heavy. So you're just gonna fly to the match, and you're gonna pay ahead of time, and they're gonna hand you some boxes of ammo when you get there, and you're gonna shoot that ammo. And if you fail chrono, it's not your fault, because you could not have tested that ammo before you got there. And that's sort of been, and basically the way it works is, if you go to especially a major IPSC match and they have match ammo, if you go to chrono and you fail chrono, you still get to shoot for your declared power factor, because it's not your ammo. You had no chance to make sure it worked before the match. But now that idea has been applied to this idea of certified ammo, which is this ammo that you buy ahead of time, you bring with you to the match, and then you kind of do this, you know, whole process where when you check in, you drop off 8 rounds of the sample, which I don't know why you drop off 8 rounds, because the procedure only requires, even if you have to test that sample, you only have to shoot 3 rounds of it. Whatever, leave that to the side. But basically, as long as the ammo you drop off when you check in matches the ammo you're shooting during the match, even if that ammo doesn't make power factor, as long as they match each other, you get to shoot for your stated power factor, which is just, yeah, it's absolutely baffling to me. It's certainly a big advantage. I've had people say quite sincerely that if you're traveling for a big match, you would basically be stupid not to shoot certified ammo, because it's not that much more expensive, and you basically, it's a get out of chrono free card. I mean, even if the chronos are reading weird, or your barrel's starting to get shot out, or who knows what, it's you basically get to skip chrono. And to me, that does not make the sport better. So I think as certified ammo continues to get more and more common, I think we need to figure out how we can accommodate the need without just basically debasing chrono as it is. Because I think, to me, that this idea of, oh, well, this ammo's on a list somewhere on some server, it's like, hey, hang on, we've got bullets, we've got a gun. Do the bullets make power factor out of the gun? To me, that's the end of the discussion. Okay, yeah, if you're flying in from a country and you didn't get to pick the ammo, that's a niche case. But that's not what we're dealing with here. These are people who drove to the match. They've had this ammo. They had every opportunity to go and chrono it themselves. Chronos are not expensive. You don't have to get the $600 Garmin. I'm still running like $150 Foldy Crony, runs off a 9-volt, and it works fine. So, you know, this idea that people can't be bothered to even chrono their ammo before going to a level 2, much less a level 3 or a nationals, just doesn't hold water with me. But those are the rules, and we follow the rules. So, you know, even though I disagreed with the whole thing, we followed everything to the letter. We did have one guy shooting the Ely Super Comp major stuff, and it's happened to another guy last year, and it went minor. It was not making major out of his open gun, and I guess it's just a known thing. I don't know if it's a particular batch of the Ely or just a lot of them do it. And I mean, open guns obviously are very prone to this, because people drill all kinds of holes in in their open gun and, vent off gas. And so it very well may be in a gun that had fewer vent holes. Maybe that ammo would make it, but in this guy's gun, it didn't. But as it was, I mean, it's not his fault. He bought the ammo. He shot it through his gun. It was certified. And so, we shot 3 rounds out of his gun, out of his delivery sample, and the power factor was within 10. And so we gave him the other 5 rounds back and said, all right, you get to shoot major, have a nice match. And that was the end of it. But the whole thing is just kind of puzzling to me. But at the end of the day, I don't think that chrono is one of these things that we should just give up on. That at Area 6 in North Carolina, it was run back to back with a stage. At North Carolina, we did the thing which we historically have done, where at unload and show clear, the RO asks you for 8 rounds out of the mags that you actually used on the stage. You might point to something on your belt or the mag in your hand that you just took out of the gun, and that's what you take to chrono, and that made things easier. And I think that's a good system. I still would like to change the rules to allow a purely random chrono, so you don't know anytime you step up to the line at unload and show clear, you could be asked for 8 rounds, and you have to chrono that before you leave, or you shoot for no score. To me, that sort of, you don't know when you're going to get checked, would actually be a more effective mechanism and require less work, because you wouldn't have this choke point of chrono during the schedule. But that is not currently allowed under the current rules. The rules say if you're going to have chrono, every shooter has to be chronoed. And understandably, there are a lot of level 2s that are just saying, yeah, it's not worth it. Let's just let people kind of compete on the honor system, and let's not do chrono. And maybe I'm just an old fuddy-duddy, stuck in my ways traditionalist, but that's just not the way it should be. Even if, okay, certified ammo kind of digs at the foundation of things, and if once someone goes through chrono, they know they've been checked, and so after that, if they've got some special ammo, they can shoot that, because they know they're not going to be randomly selected to go back. Yeah, I know all those things, but at the end of the day, to me, it's still something on principle that we should do, and we shouldn't just give up on it. We should actually make it better. And so that's definitely something I'm going to be driving towards. But as far as I know, at Area 6, things went well. From firsthand knowledge at North Carolina, I know things went well. The Garmins were a huge win, and so hopefully that'll, if anything, make running chrono be that much more palatable in the future, because, I mean, in the time I've been in the sport, we've gone from 4-foot long chrono coffins to a lab radar that fits in a laptop bag to a chrono that's now the size of a GoPro. And I mean, living in the future is pretty cool. So it's hopefully we'll see more of that and more sort of well-run chronos. And I honorable mention to the bullet pulling setup. So just like last year, we had 2 Lee single stage presses with collet bullet pullers in them. And when you walked up, we pulled one of your bullets and weighed it right there. We didn't do this. All right, everybody submits their ammo ahead of time, so we have time to pull them all with the hammer pullers. We did have the hammer puller just because there were a few bullets, I mean, maybe 1 out of 100, that the collet pullers just couldn't get a handle on. But pretty much anything that was again, it was a 99% case where we could just throw it in the collet puller. It comes right out, and you just you weigh the bullet right there. No asking for bullet weight, no having to take all the submissions ahead of time, so you have time to hammer through them. You just, in the time it takes the guy running, the guy sitting at the chronos, he's doing an equipment check, making sure the gun complies with everything. In that time, the second guy who's got the tablet can pull the bullet, weigh it, type the weight in, and then be ready to start typing in the velocities. And so for a 2-man crew with, I don't know, $400 worth of equipment for the 2 pullers, a little folding workbench, and it really, I wouldn't do it any other way. That's all I can really say. So I think that is everything I have to say on those topics. Obviously, we'll continue to bring things up as time goes on if there's sort of more stories to tell. But of all the notes, all the sort of after action thoughts, that's everything that was on my list. So that wraps up this episode of Short Course. If you want to get in touch with me, my email is ben@berryshooting.com. Talk to you next time.